Hey, what's up everyone? Mike here in the BFH garage. Today we're gonna do a frame raise on this LJ. So this isn't required for anything other than if you want to get another 1.25 inch out of clearance. So when you look on the backside of a Jeep here on a TJ, most of them that have big tires and suspension, you're gonna have some sort of body lift here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the frame and we're actually gonna raise the bumper back up into its stock height. And the way we're gonna do that is off the side. You got some marks here. We're gonna cut this thing off. We're gonna raise it, re-weld on the top, flap up the bottom. There's a whole process for it and I'm gonna show you how to do it. But that'll give you another 1.25 inch clearance off the backside frame. And anybody who's wheeling on the rocks where it matters knows that every inch or every 1/4 inch you can get is key to success. So this project's gonna take a little bit of time. Let's get busy. To make this work, we have to drop the gas tank. We have to get all that crap out of the way. On the back side, he has some LED lights mounted. We're gonna have to take those off because those will not be able to be mounted there anymore. And so we'll get that gas tank out of the way. We'll get the fuel line wrapped up pretty good since we're gonna be grinding and welding. We don't want anything to get inside the fuel line, and then we'll get cutting this thing. With the fuel tank out of the way, now we have full access to the inside of the frame rail to make whatever cuts we're gonna make. Before you drop your fuel tank, make sure you pull your fuel pump relay and then try to start the Jeep to take that pressure off of that fuel line. If your TJ has a Schrader valve up front on the fuel rail, it's real easy to do it there. You can release the pressure there. So either way, and then the last thing I do always is I'll take aluminum foil and I'll cover the fuel lines, not so much because I'm worried about sparks or anything, but that bends around, folds around really easy, and it keeps fragments of anything from accidentally getting inside the fuel line. So now that we have the Jeep up in there, believe me, this makes it a lot easier to work on, but you can certainly do this from the ground. Planning is everything. You've heard the term measure twice, cut once. This shop's all about cutting twice and measuring 6 times, but we're hopefully gonna get it done once today. So planning is everything. Our body lift that we currently have here is 1.25 inch. So the objective is going to be to cut in the middle of the frame, cut the frame off, and then raise it that 1.25 inch, and it will butt right up where it did in the stock location. So planning everything out, measuring everything multiple times is key to success. All right, so looking at this frame rail here, just know on the backside you have a cross member, so you want to make sure you're getting everything in the right location. So the way this is going to work, we're taking the frame, we're cutting it here all the way through. The backside of the frame drops off. We're going to cut here into a pie shape, and then this bottom piece here is going to get folded right up and become the new bottom rail at this line. This frame then, where this line here, that's 1.25 inch. It gets raised straight up 1.25 inch. So this is the new line here. And then to make up for the difference of 1.25 inch up top here, we're gonna take some stock that's laying around the shop and we're gonna build a new pie piece to fit in there and make sure we solidify that frame. These frames do see a lot of, violence is probably the right word. When you're coming off a rock and your tail end slams on a rock, these things get beat up pretty good. So we wanna make sure we box that in, get good welds on there, and we don't wanna see it falling apart on the trail. So once we have everything marked out, and again, double, triple checked, then you want to tie a string around this thing and you want to send it all the way across. That way you can ensure everything is square on both sides. And when you raise this thing up, it's not going to get cockeyed. Now, a good measuring point is from this hole here. I measured from this side of the hole back to the back side of the frame, and it's the same on both sides. So I'm confident you can use that hole as a mark, but as with anything, double check your measurements, make sure everything's good. All we have to do now is cut this thing off. All right, we have the frame cut back here. The only thing holding this thing up now are the body mounts. So we'll have somebody hold the bumper up. We'll get the body mounts loose. The backside of this frame will fall right off. Then we come in, we make our pie cuts out of there. So now that we have the pie cut here, we have 1.25 inches down to there. So we're gonna take the bottom flap here, we're gonna bend it up right to where it gets to that 1.25 inch mark. So there's gonna be a little bit of a gap there. We'll fill that in with weld, but that is the whole goal. 1.25 inches exactly, that way your body mounts line up perfectly. Pie shapes cut out, just so you know, you may have to trim a little bit back here so that way this thing could actually fold up, because if you leave it at too much of a curve, then it'll be hard for it to fold up. So you're probably gonna have to play around with that just a little bit, but you kind of get an eye there. We should focus on that, there you go. And as this folds up, the tail here is probably gonna stick out a little bit, so we'll have to trim that up too. BFH, best tool in the garage. Now, as this comes up, we're gonna have to get a C-clamp to push it the rest of the way. And if it gets off sideways at all, you can use a C-clamp to straighten it back out. So if for some reason you're getting off a little bit, it's easy to fix. So when it's all in place, that's what it's gonna look like. If you look here closely, this part right here is just out a little bit. So you gotta trim that up so the frame can sit back to it flush. Now that we have clamped in place, let's tack the tongue up in place, and then we'll put the bumper up there and get everything to line up. But we want to tack those in place so we can remove the clamp. With everything cut, double check everything. You want to make sure that this seam comes up here nice and tight. Your body mount, you want to have snug. I wouldn't torque it all the way to spec because it'll cause the frame to kind of clock down or up depending on which way your body mount is. But you want to kind of line everything up on the bottom side where it's flush. Your bevel here is somewhat flush. It shouldn't be tight. So if you see the light gap through there, that's the width of that cutoff blade when it cut it. So there should be a little bit of a gap there. Keep the clamp on until you get your tack set. Get your tack set, and then you can run a bead, whether you run downhill, uphill, whatever works for you. Everybody has their preference, I don't care, but just make sure you get it welded good. And once we get done with this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back over it with a flap disc and grind it kind of smooth, and then we're gonna plate both sides of this. So we'll put a square plate that'll go from here to here to here and back over, and that'll help reinforce that. But you wanna make sure you get those two metals, the two parts of the frame stuck together pretty good first. So we got all of that welded in, ground down. Now we need to put that cap on there to get our frame coming in and strengthened up. And then I'm gonna put a plate all the way across that to reinforce everything. So that's where we're at. We have the top cap on here now. We ground down the welds enough to put a reinforcement plate along the side. Not necessary, absolutely, but you can certainly do it for reassurance to make sure this is not going to crack or break. As with all welding projects, make sure you take your time because you can really heat up that metal pretty good. So we put on our fish plates. See, I'm learning this stuff too as we go along. So you end up rounding the edges, and that takes away any stress risers. So that's the reason that's like that. You learn something new every day. And anyway, make sure you prime paint all this stuff back and get that gas tank back up and installed. So as you can see here, remember we used to have that 1.25 inch gap right there. Now we're back to the stock height on that, right up where it needs to be. Same thing on that side with the fish plate and all that. So everything is now good to go. Finished product, here we go. Tucked up nice, no more butt crack. Problem solved. That'll make a big difference when you're off-road. A little inch and a quarter, you don't think sounds like much, but let me tell you what, it is huge.